Welcome to our latest Influencers in Hospitality interview, a video Q&A where we ask the influential leaders in our industry to share the strategies and insights that have made them so successful.
Welcome to our latest Influencers in Hospitality interview. I am Roger Allen, and this is a Q&A where I ask the influential leaders in our industry to share the strategies and insights that have made them so successful. I have the great pleasure of welcoming Alexander Schneider, the president of Nikki Beach Hotels and Resorts, to Influencers in Hospitality. Alexander, welcome. Great to see you, and how are you?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. You catch me on a sunny day in Barcelona, and life couldn't be better.
Super, super. Well, I know you are one of the hardest working hospitality leaders who is constantly traveling. Every time I reach out to you, you're catching a red eye somewhere around the world. So really thank you for taking the time out and joining me. So let's not delay getting into the questions. And, I'm curious with this first question, as an influencer living through the crisis upon a crisis, as the IMF now is terming, and referring to the pandemic and the conflict that we're seeing play out in Europe, has it changed your approach to work, your philosophy on that? And if so, what has it taught you?
It's a very good question. I would think that the let's say the basic parameters of what we do have remained the same, but I think the biggest change is not in the what, but in the how. And I think the how we approach things has changed. I mean, as you know from previous conversations that we had, the pandemic was almost an accelerator to what we have been doing in the years before, because the type of product that we create, the type of ambience, and the type of spaces that we curate globally has become even more in demand due to the pandemic. However, I wouldn't say that it was really a good time for us to lean back and to say, okay, we got it all sorted, this is what it is, and people will love it. We were working very hard on trying to understand this new consumption profile, because that's really what we see is changing. It's the as I said earlier, we are looking at the same sort of travelers that have the same sort of interests, but the way they express the interest, the way they consume our products is entirely different. In our case, luckily enough, it is very much to our benefit. They stay longer, the willingness to spend is much higher. We see a certain, I would say, influx of hedonism, that people are, when they're traveling, they really want to have a good time and they really want to have a good product. So it's a little bit like this last night on earth sort of syndrome that we're seeing. So obviously we are pivoting on how we create our offers and how we curate our products. I think we've also gone into a very strong approach of less quantity, more quality overall, where we were always eager to beat the good old STR report on every parameter. We're now really focusing on saying, okay, let's cater even harder, even more, I would say, more strict to our core target group, and let's really make sure that this is 100% versus trying to please everybody.
How do you foresee this influencing and changing the hotel guest experience in the future, if we can, look into the future somewhat, based upon what you've just explained and talking about, consumption profile, et cetera, et cetera? How does it change what you expect the guest to want and demand?
See, I think, first of all, we are unfortunately still working in a very, very reactive industry. I mean, when you look at all of the, let's say, great potential that COVID brought to hospitality on a global basis and how little of that was really used. I think, you know, there is still a lot of, let's say, yeah, reactive behavior in the market when it comes to the brands. I think we were in a certain degree lucky because we always believed in our product. We always believed in that the one size fits all approach is no longer going to work. And COVID accelerated that trend. And I think, you know, for us, the most important path that we want to follow onto is to really to understand even more who are our key clients, who are the real fans of the brand, what do they want, how can we cater better to them, and really to cut back on the fringes of other target groups that we might have been after. And I think this is really a trend that's here to stay. You know, I mean, we always talk about the digital age and how accessible information has become. People know exactly what they want, and you can't fool them anymore. If you have a product that is not a lifestyle product and you call it a lifestyle product, you're not going to go very far, right? If you want to lure somebody into a, let's say, family resort that is really more an adults only resort, it's not going to work. You know, you need to choose your cup. And I am very, very concerned to see that there's again a similar trend that we had when this entire greenwashing wave came in and everybody wanted to be super sustainable by putting, you know, bamboo straws in drinks and said, okay, it's done, right? We are sustainable. I think, you know, what we will work as Nikki Beach even harder on is really to polish that product. To polish that product that is really made from that target group, and that target group is our fans of our brand, of what we do, and how we do it.
You just mentioned that we are still a very reactive industry. I'm curious to understand from you where you think our industry can find additional or hidden value.
I think it all starts with faith and conviction in what you do, and also the willingness to take risks. And I think, you know, hospitality, because we're all trained to serve, right? We're all trained to please. That by nature doesn't make us the most courageous people, right? And I think this is a reflection of what we see in the market, right? Everybody, you know, tries to please all types of target groups, you know, and I think the real treasure troves are in the fact that there are still products yet to be created that are made for individual target groups, where these target groups really don't find 80% of what they expect, but 100%. But on the flip side, you will have other target groups that will drop probably from 60% to 0%, and that's okay. And I think this is really something that we have to embrace globally. That, you know, these whether it's leisure, whether it's business, we will face a time where people will only travel to products that they're 100% in sync with.
It's it's a controversial comment there in some respects. Maybe if I kind of strip it back, because you're saying that, you know, there's still gaps in the market. So that's almost, you know, stating that, you know, this throughout this plethora of brands that we have, there, you know, we still don't have enough.
Well, I think we have certainly more than enough brands, right? And you see that bigger brands are creating new brands every day, right? But where my key point of criticism would be is, like, take these brands and give them a real profile. You know, for instance, lifestyle is not a profile. Lifestyle is like a overused term that wants to make things look cooler, right? And this is the same, like a resort is not a profile. A resort is basically a very vague description description of what a hotel does.
You've
Right.
probably just answered my next question, because I was about to ask, as an industry, what should we stop or start doing? So I don't know if I'm literally taking the words out of your mouth there and actually saying, well, you know what, stop creating brands and start creating, better profile products.
I think we are so prone to fall for taglines. And it's a bit of a pity, I mentioned sustainability earlier. Now it's lifestyle. I think boutique is the next chip to fall. And this is what I mean with reactive. These taglines come up, they gain a certain traction in the market, and whoop, 80% of the market follows. Right? I mean, now leisure is the new thing. I would say it's absolutely not. I would say the new thing needs to be, how are we going to curate corporate travel in the future so that it will adapt to all of the new needs and wants of this. This, I think, is the hottest topic right now. But instead, everybody's running after leisure because leisure did well, right? But I mean, leisure did also well before. It was just the only segment that kept on doing well, right?
Yeah, I used to have a sign on my door that says lead, follow, or get out of the way. And that somewhat speaks to that. You're not necessarily following the herd there in terms of, leisure, for example. If we can talk a little bit more about you and your successful traits as, a president and a CEO. What is the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
I think it's really two things. It's, first of all, never think because a certain, let's say, idea or a certain task comes easy to you, that it's just an easy task. Sometimes you're just talented in certain ways and you're untalented in certain other ways. And sometimes, and this is, I reflect that very often in what we do. Let's find the thing that we're really good at. Let's be proud of that. Let's hone this skill almost in a Japanese cultural way. Let's get really into perfection mode there. And let's beat the market, or as an individual, make your mark with the very skills that you're good at. Don't try to become such a generalist by being good at everything, but then really not perfect at anything. I think that was really something that always helped me, when you get these moments where you think like, should I now develop a certain new qualification in ABC? Always ask yourself whether your key qualification is already, all the way there before you venture out into fields that you might not be so talented. And then the second thing, which is very related to it, I believe, in order to be in charge of whether it's just a hotel or whether it's a couple of hotels or whether it's a whole brand, you really, really need to understand what you are doing in terms of how you talk about your product, how you present your product, what your product is there for. It's again, my favorite question is the why, understand your why. And then your how will come naturally, right? But I don't think that right now, a lot of, from general managers, department heads to leaders of brands really ask themselves daily the question why, because that needs to be our all-defining moment when we talk about brands, right? And that's the difference between what Apple does and what, for instance, what a company like Dell does, right? And Apple asks itself daily the question why, and their answer is that they want to be the best luxury product brand in electronics, right? Dell says we want to make good computers at a good price, right? Completely different approach. And I think hospitality can really use a little more whys than hows.
What do you think is true that many people might disagree with?
Can you repeat that question?
Yeah, sure. What do you think is true that many people might disagree with you?
I think it is not a very good way to create a company by assuming a big basket of brands to put them under the same leadership in order to achieve synergies. If you don't really understand and care for each of these brands. I don't think it is a good idea if you are a very successful hospitality company. You have some, let's say, base brands that have been successful for the last 50 to 100 years, to completely abandon them and just to create new brands around them in order to really to distract from the fact that your core brand or your core material is not so on vogue anymore, right? I mean, again, when you look at car producers, Porsche would never abandon the 911 just because SUVs are more in demand. Yes, they will create an SUV, but they will still put 80% of their R&D into the 911 because Porsche without a 911 is not going to survive, right? And I feel this is something where by nature, many colleagues would not like to agree with, but I think it's true.
What is the most unusual thing you've had to do to make it work?
I think it is always the same thing. It's stick to your guns, especially where once you bite the dust, you know, really to get back up, never to lose your key path out of sight, you know, and I believe, you know, in today's world, we get so much information that we are more likely to lose really our path where we want to go to. And when I started at Nikki Beach, we were a very, very different company from where we are now. And sometimes, you know, it really takes a lot of stamina really to say, okay, when I said yes to this role, I presented something that I believed in, and I still believe in that. And despite, you know, pandemics, despite conflicts, despite inflations, you know, if your idea is right, then follow it. Don't be distracted. And I think this role right now and this job that I'm having is probably the best I've ever had, because it is A, the most controversial I've ever took. B, it's probably the most enriching that I've ever had. And it's the most demanding at the same time. It is really having the chance to create something with your own hands, despite all of the resistance of the markets, despite all of the, let's say, sometimes, you know, opinions, what a brand is and what a brand is not. And that's why I think, yeah, what is the most unusual thing? Today, I would say the most unusual thing is really to stick to your guns and not to pivot, because pivoting has become almost like a drug.
Mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm. And that in that you're referring to kind of reacting to the trends.
Yeah, it's exactly. It is all about believe in what you want to do and stick to it. There's always going to be somebody who's going to tell you that you should be doing exactly the opposite right now. There's always some data that is going to point into the opposite direction. You know, this is the tricky thing with data. Data is very pliable, right? And we're living in an age of data, right? Macro data, micro data, wherever you go. And sometimes you just really need to develop the faith that if you are, let's say, at an intersection and data points to the left, but your conviction points to the right, sometimes you need to take that conviction, you know, because we've seen in the last 3 years behaviors change instantaneously, trends coming and going. I mean, I always like to say when somebody says, "Oh, Nikki Beach is such a trendy brand," and I always say, please don't say that. You know, we are not a trend. What we are is probably a modern classic, but we are not a trend because the life expectancy of a trend has come down dramatically, and it will come down. We will go into a consumption cycle where we're no longer going to consume products. We're going to consume brands and trends, and that almost on a daily basis.
Parting question. If the older and wiser Alexander of today and the influencer that you are could pass on a few wise words to a younger, a younger Alexander at the beginning of his career, what would he say?
He would probably say that sometimes it's good to take a step back and to look at what you've done instead of always pushing forward. You know, these moments, these pauses on where you really check back on all of your things that you did right and all of the things that you have done wrong, and then you basically have a look at the stuff that you did wrong, and then don't ask yourself what you did wrong, ask yourself why you did it wrong, and then probably try to learn from these moments where you were mentally at and why you decided for that. I think that would be that's definitely something that I would do different. In this world today, I think pausing is super important, and I'm trying to learn that. And as you said in the beginning, I'm sort of a non-stop train, but time and again, you need to take this pause and really create a resume in order to see again whether your conviction is still there and whether it is really still the pure thing, or whether you have sort of corrupted yourself along the way. I think that's, as unwise as I am, still my one recommendation.
Well, I'm internally grateful, Alexander, that you actually took the pause button today, because it was really great to talk to you. And thank you for joining me on Influencers in Hospitality.
Thank you so much, Roger, and it's been a great pleasure, and really congratulations on this format. I think you really ask all of the critical questions, and sometimes it's not so easy to answer them, but I like it a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you.